I've had a bodyguard for exactly 6 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days. Not that I'm counting or anything. His name is Cade Winters, and he's basically a walking, breathing statue carved from marble and expensive cologne. The strong, silent type doesn't even begin to cover it. In all these months, I've learned exactly 3 personal facts about him. He takes his coffee black. He's a former Special Forces operative, and he has this tiny scar above his left eyebrow that I definitely haven't spent way too much time staring at. My father hired him after some vague security concerns that he refused to elaborate on, because apparently being the son of Vincent Vale, billionaire tech mogul and professional worrier, means I need a shadow. A 6'2", broad-shouldered, devastatingly handsome shadow who makes my college friends whisper and giggle whenever he walks me to class. Your bodyguard is stupid hot, Pip told me for probably the 100th time this morning as we left our dorm. Like, illegally hot. Should be arrested for those cheekbones hot. He's just doing his job, Pip. His job is to stand there looking like a Calvin Klein model who moonlights as an assassin? I didn't have a good answer for that. The thing about Cade is that he's incredibly consistent. Every morning, he's waiting outside my building at precisely 7:30, wearing one of his perfectly tailored dark suits that probably cost more than my tuition. He opens the car door for me with a curt nod, drives me wherever I need to go, and then follows me around campus maintaining exactly 3 steps of distance. Not 2 steps. Not 4. 3. Like it's written into his contract or something. He doesn't chat. Doesn't joke. Doesn't really smile, except for this tiny almost smirk when I do something particularly clumsy, which happens more often than I'd like to admit. Mostly he just exists in my peripheral vision, this constant, silent presence that I've gotten so used to that I feel weird on the rare occasions when he's not there. Today was supposed to be like any other Tuesday. I had morning classes, then my usual stop at Moonbeam Cafe where I'd grab my afternoon coffee and maybe actually start on the assignment I'd been procrastinating. Cade would stand by the door, scanning the room with those sharp gray eyes, looking intimidating and gorgeous and completely untouchable. Except today there was Remy. Remy Laurent was new, started working at Moonbeam about 2 weeks ago. He had this artistic, slightly disheveled look with paint stains permanently decorating his fingers and the brightest smile I'd ever seen. We chatted a few times while he made my order, and he had this way of making me laugh with terrible puns about coffee beans and existential philosophy. 1 oat milk latte for my favorite customer, Remy announced as I reached the counter, his eyes crinkling with that sunshine smile. I felt my cheeks warm. I'm sure you say that to everyone. Nope. Just the cute ones with good taste in poetry. He'd noticed the Rumi book sticking out of my bag last week, and we'd spent 15 minutes discussing metaphysical poetry while the line grew behind me. Actually, Asher, I was wondering. He picked up a purple marker and wrote something on my cup. When he handed it to me, I saw 10 digits and a little heart drawn next to them. My brain short-circuited. Was this happening? Was Remy, sweet, artistic, sunshine Remy, giving me his number? I thought maybe we could grab dinner sometime. Like, an actual sit-down meal, not just me pushing coffee at you across a counter. That would be... I fumbled with my wallet, trying to process human speech while simultaneously experiencing a minor cardiac event. That's when I felt it. A hand, large and warm, settled possessively on my lower back. Not hovering, not barely touching. Actually touching, with intent and pressure and heat that seemed to burn through my sweater. Then Cade's chest pressed against my shoulder, solid and overwhelming, and he leaned in close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy that made my head spin. He'd never been this close before. Never touched me beyond a professional hand on my elbow to guide me through crowds. Never, ever invaded my personal space like this. He's not interested. Cade's voice was arctic, each word precisely cut and dangerously cold. I couldn't breathe. My heart was doing some kind of Olympic gymnastics routine in my chest. Cade's fingers were still on my back, and I could feel the heat of him all along my side, and my brain was screaming, this is not professional, this is not the 3-step distance, what is happening? Remy's smile faltered, confusion crossing his features. Oh, I didn't realize you two were together. Sorry man, I didn't mean to. We're not. The words burst out of me in a mortifying squeak. We're not together. He's my bodyguard. We're definitely not. Cade, what are you? But Cade's hand tightened slightly on my back, possessive and claiming, and when I glanced up at him, his jaw was clenched so hard I thought he might crack a molar. His eyes, those usually calm, controlled gray eyes, were stormier than I'd ever seen them. Bodyguard. Got it. Remy raised his hands in surrender, still looking confused but backing off. Well, the offer stands if you ever want to, Asher. No pressure. I barely managed a nod before Cade was steering me toward the exit, his hands still burning into my lower back, guiding me through the cafe and out into the parking lot with barely contained tension radiating off him in waves. The moment we were outside, I spun around to face him, my coffee sloshing dangerously in my hand. What was that? My voice came out higher than intended. Cade, you can't just, what was that? He stood there, his chest rising and falling like he'd run a marathon instead of just walking 20 feet. For the first time in 6 months, I watched Cade Winter's perfect composure crack. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. His jaw worked like he was physically fighting to keep words inside. And his eyes, God, those eyes, locked onto mine with an intensity that made my knees forget how to function properly. The 3-step distance was gone. He was right there, close enough to touch, and something dangerous and desperate flickered across his face. That, he said quietly, his voice rough and low and nothing like his usual controlled tone, was me doing my job. But we both knew he was lying. The way he was looking at me, like I was something precious and terrifying, like he wanted to pull me closer and push me away simultaneously, like he was barely holding himself back from something that would change everything between us, that wasn't professional. That was something else entirely. And as I stood there in the parking lot, my heart racing and my skin still burning where his hand had been, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I wanted it to be something else. Maybe I'd wanted that for a while now. The cafe incident changed everything, and I mean everything. Cade still maintained his 3-step distance, technically. He still drove me to classes, still scanned every room we entered with those sharp gray eyes, still stood at attention like the perfect professional he was supposed to be. But something fundamental had shifted, like a crack in a dam that was slowly, inevitably widening. I could feel his eyes on me constantly now. In lecture halls where he waited by the door, I'd lose track of whatever the professor was saying because I could feel the weight of his gaze boring into the back of my head. At the library, I'd look up from my textbooks to find him staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher, something between torture and hunger. It was driving me absolutely insane. Dude, Pip whispered one evening as we sat in our dorm room, supposedly watching some reality show about people dating in pods or whatever. Your bodyguard is staring at you through the window again. I looked up to see Cade's silhouette visible through the frosted glass of our door, completely still, clearly watching. That's his job, Pip. He's supposed to keep an eye on me. Asher. The light of my life. That is not a keeping you safe stare. That's a I want to devour you whole stare. It's intense. Like, stalker-level intense, but also. Pip fanned himself dramatically. Kinda hot? Is it hot? It feels hot. You're being ridiculous. Am I though? Because I'm pretty sure if I stared at someone that hard, they'd file a restraining order. But when he does it, you get all flustered and pink and, oh my God, you're blushing right now just thinking about it. I threw a pillow at him, which he dodged easily, cackling. But Pip wasn't wrong. I was flustered. Constantly. Because Cade's careful control was slipping in small, devastating ways that I couldn't stop noticing. Like in the car. Cade had always been a smooth driver, professional, calm, efficient. But now I'd catch him gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white, his jaw clenched, especially when I'd talk about my day or mention other people. Yesterday, when I'd casually mentioned that my lab partner Marco had helped me with our chemistry assignment, Cade had gripped that wheel so hard I thought he might rip it off the dashboard. Marco's really smart, I'd said, just making conversation. He explained the whole concept in like 5 minutes when I'd been struggling for an hour. The temperature in the car had dropped about 20 degrees. Cade said nothing, but his knuckles went from tan to bone white in seconds. Then there was the proximity thing. Cade's sacred 3-step distance kept disappearing. I'd be walking across campus and suddenly feel him right behind me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his body. I'd turn around to find him barely a foot away, looking startled, like he'd been pulled forward by some force he couldn't control and hadn't even realized he'd moved. It happened at least twice a day now, and each time he'd step back with this look of frustration and confusion, like his own body was betraying him. The breaking point came at my father's charity gala. I tried to get out of it. These events were usually boring and full of stuffy business people talking about stocks and mergers. But my father had insisted, and Pip had gotten way too excited about playing dress-up with me. "You're wearing the navy suit," Pip had declared, pulling it from my closet. "The one that makes you look like a slightly dangerous graduate student who reads poetry and could break hearts. That's weirdly specific. Trust me, Cade's going to lose his mind." I'd rolled my eyes, but I wore the navy suit. It was fitted, maybe a little too fitted, and when I came down the stairs of our building, Cade was waiting by the car like always. The moment he saw me, everything stopped. His eyes went wide. His lips parted slightly. For exactly 2 seconds, I counted, his perfect professional mask completely shattered, and I saw something raw and hungry flash across his face. Pure want. Desperate, unfiltered desire that made my stomach flip and my skin feel too tight. Then he locked it down, but his hands were shaking slightly as he opened the car door. "You look." His voice was rougher than usual. He cleared his throat, tried again. "Presentable." Presentable? I looked hot and we both knew it. The gala was held at some ridiculous mansion with crystal chandeliers and champagne fountains. I tried to focus on being charming and making small talk with my father's business associates, but I was hyper-aware of Cade standing nearby, watching my every move. Then Sterling approached. Sterling Ashford was the son of one of my father's business partners, all white teeth, too much hair gel, and the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. He'd cornered me by the refreshments table and wouldn't take a hint. "Asher, right? I've heard so much about you from your father," he said, touching my arm. Fin. He'd been doing that constantly, finding excuses to put his hands on me. My shoulder, my elbow, my arm. "You're even better looking in person." I laughed awkwardly, trying to step back, but he moved closer. "We should grab drinks sometime. I know this great place downtown, very exclusive." Another touch, this time his hand lingering on my forearm. Suddenly Cade was there. One moment Sterling was crowding my space, and the next, Cade had inserted himself between us with the lethal grace of a predator. He didn't shove or make a scene. He simply existed in that space with such commanding presence that Sterling automatically stepped back. "Mr. Vale needs air," Cade announced, his voice leaving no room for argument. His hand found that spot on my lower back again, that possessive, claiming touch that made my brain short-circuit, and he was guiding me through the crowd toward the balcony. I went without resistance, my heart hammering. Outside, under the stars and string lights, the noise of the gala faded to a muffled hum. The cool night air should have cleared my head, but all I could focus on was Cade standing there, his chest rising and falling rapidly, his hands clenched into fists at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from something. "Cade," I said softly, "what is happening with you?" He didn't answer. Just stood there, staring at me with those stormy gray eyes, his jaw working, every muscle in his body tense. When he finally spoke, his voice was broken, raw in a way I'd never heard before. "I can't." He stopped abruptly, ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up for the first time ever. The controlled, composed Cade Winters was completely unraveling in front of me. "Asher, I can't watch other people touch you anymore." My breath caught. "I can't stand 3 steps back while they get to make you laugh, make you blush, put their hands on you like they have any right." His voice was rising, desperate. "I can't." He cut himself off violently, turning away from me, his shoulders rigid with tension. My heart was racing so fast I thought it might explode. "Can't what?" I whispered. The silence stretched between us, heavy and electric. When Cade finally turned back to face me, the look in his eyes made my knees weak. "I can't keep pretending I'm just your bodyguard." After Cade's confession on the balcony, he didn't speak to me for 3 days. Well, that's not entirely accurate. He spoke to me in the capacity of bodyguard to client. Clipped, professional sentences. "We're leaving in 5 minutes. Stay close." Watch your step. But the Cade who had looked at me with desperate, raw emotion under the string lights? That Cade had vanished, replaced by this hollow, robotic version that was somehow worse than the stoic professional I'd started with. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Wouldn't stand closer than necessary. The accidental proximity, the lingering touches, the heated stares, all of it gone, like he'd built a wall between us overnight and reinforced it with pure willpower. It was torture. Absolute torture. Okay, what happened? Pip demanded on day 2, watching Cade stand by our dorm room door like a particularly handsome statue. Did you two have a fight? Because the sexual tension is so thick I could cut it with a knife and serve it at dinner. There's no sexual tension, I muttered, not looking up from my laptop. Asher. He looks at you like you're water and he's been wandering the desert for 40 years. Except now he's also looking at you like the water might kill him but he wants to drink it anyway. It's very dramatic. Also, Pip leaned in conspiratorially. You literally sighed his name in your sleep last night. Cade, he mimicked in a breathy voice. Oh, Cade. I threw a pillow at him with more force than necessary. But Pip was right. The tension was unbearable. Every time Cade drove me somewhere, the silence in the car felt suffocating. Every time I caught a glimpse of his clenched jaw or tight shoulders, I wanted to reach out, to say something, to bridge this awful distance between us. But I didn't know how. What was I supposed to say? Hey, remember when you confessed you couldn't pretend to be just my bodyguard anymore? Want to talk about that? By day 3, I was going insane. I snapped at Pip over nothing, couldn't focus in lectures, and nearly walked into a door because I was too busy staring at the back of Cade's head, trying to will him to turn around and look at me. That evening, I had a late class, Advanced Literary Theory, which ran until 8:30. Usually, Cade would wait outside the building, then walk me back to my dorm. Simple routine. Safe and predictable. Except when I came out of the lecture hall, Cade wasn't there. I stood on the steps, confusion turning to concern. In 6 months, Cade had never, ever not been where he was supposed to be. I pulled out my phone to call him, my thumb hovering over his contact, when someone grabbed me from behind. A hand clamped over my mouth, cutting off my scream. An arm wrapped around my torso, yanking me backward into the alley beside the building. Panic exploded in my chest as I was dragged into the darkness, my phone clattering to the ground. There were 2 of them. I could smell cigarettes and something sharp, chemical. One of them, the one holding me, was much stronger than me, and when I tried to kick back, he just tightened his grip until I couldn't breathe. Rich boy, like you must have something valuable, a raspy voice hissed in my ear. The second man stepped in front of me, and the dim streetlight caught the edge of a knife in his hand. Terror clawed up my throat. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. The knife pressed against my ribs, cold even through my shirt, and I thought this is it. This is how I die in some stupid alley because my bodyguard wasn't here, because I'm alone, because... A growl. Not a yell or a shout. A literal, feral growl that sounded barely human. Cade appeared from the shadows like something out of a nightmare, except he was my nightmare, he was their nightmare. I'd never seen him move like that, pure, controlled violence. One moment the knife was at my ribs, the next Cade had the man's arm twisted at an unnatural angle and the knife was skittering across the pavement. The man holding me let go, tried to run, but Cade was faster. So much faster. Within seconds, both men were on the ground, groaning, and Cade was pulling me against his chest, his whole body shaking. Are you hurt? His hands were everywhere, checking my arms, my ribs where the knife had been, tilting my face up toward the streetlight with trembling fingers. Asher, answer me. Did they hurt you? Did they cut you? Talk to me. I'm fine, I managed, but my voice was shaking. I'm okay, they didn't. You're not fine. He was yelling now, something I'd never, ever heard from controlled, composed Cade Winters. You could have been killed. I was gone for 5 minutes, to take a call from your father and you almost. He stopped abruptly, seeming to realize he was clutching me so tightly I could barely breathe. But he didn't let go. If anything, he held me tighter, one hand cradling the back of my head, the other wrapped around my waist, pulling me impossibly closer. I could feel his heart hammering against my chest, racing just as fast as mine. I can't lose you, he whispered into my hair, his voice broken and raw and nothing like the professional bodyguard I'd known. I know I have no right. I know this is crossing every line, every boundary, every rule in the book. But Asher, I can't breathe when you're not safe. When you're not near me. My hands fisted in his jacket, all the fear and adrenaline and months of tension crashing over me at once. I was shaking, maybe crying, I couldn't tell. All I knew was that Cade was here. He was solid and real and holding me like I was the most precious thing in the world. Then don't let me go, I heard myself say, my voice muffled against his chest. Cade pulled back just enough to look at me, his hands cupping my face. His eyes were wild, desperate, searching mine like he was looking for permission, for confirmation, for anything to tell him this was okay. If I kiss you right now, he said, his voice rough and low, I won't be able to stop. I won't be able to go back to being just your bodyguard. I won't be able to stand 3 steps away and pretend I don't want to be closer. I won't. Good, I breathed, my hands moving up to grip his shoulders. I don't want you to. Something in his expression cracked, all that careful control finally shattering completely. Asher. Cade. Shut up and kiss me. He kissed me like a man possessed, like he'd been holding back for centuries and finally broke. His lips crashed against mine, desperate and consuming and perfect. One hand tangled in my hair, the other pressed against my lower back, pulling me flush against him. I gasped against his mouth and he deepened the kiss, pouring months of restrained wanting into it. When we finally broke apart, both gasping for air, he pressed his forehead to mine, his eyes closed, his breathing ragged. This is going to be complicated, he murmured. I don't care, I said, still gripping his shoulders like he might disappear. Your father will fire me. I really don't care. Asher. He opened his eyes, and they were softer than I'd ever seen them, vulnerable and terrified and hopeful all at once. Cade. I don't care about complicated. I don't care if it's against the rules. I just care about you. So please, shut up and kiss me again. A small, genuine smile crossed his face, the first real smile I'd ever seen from him. Yes, sir. He did. Telling my father was exactly as terrible as I'd imagined, except somehow worse. Vincent Vale didn't become a billionaire by being soft or sentimental. He became one by making calculated decisions, eliminating variables, and maintaining control over every aspect of his empire, including, apparently, his son's life. So when I showed up at his office the next morning with Cade, our fingers intertwined like the lovesick idiot I apparently was, my father's expression could have frozen the sun. He looked at our joined hands, looked at Cade's face, looked at mine. Then he set down his pen with the kind of careful precision that meant he was absolutely furious. You're fired, he said, not even looking at Cade directly. Just like that. Cold. Final. Dad. He took advantage of his position. Violated every protocol I put in place. I trusted him to protect you, not seduce you. My father's voice was ice, each word cutting. Security will escort you out, Mr. Winters. I'll have your final paycheck. He didn't seduce me. I protested, stepping forward. If anything, Mr. Vale, Cade interrupted quietly, and I felt his hand squeeze mine once before he let go. He stood straighter, shoulders back, facing my father with that military bearing. You're absolutely right. I crossed every professional boundary. I should have requested a transfer the moment I realized my feelings were compromising my judgment. But I didn't. My father's eyes narrowed. Why not? Because the thought of someone else protecting Asher, someone who might not notice that he skips meals when he's stressed about exams, or that he always checks his blind spots twice when he's nervous, or that he fidgets with his ring when he's anxious about something but won't say it out loud, Cade's voice caught slightly. I couldn't do it. I couldn't hand him over to someone who wouldn't know these things. Someone who might miss something important. I stared at him. He'd noticed all of that? The meal skipping, the ring fidgeting, tiny habits I didn't even realize I had? My father leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. So instead, you decided to become romantically involved with your client. The one person you were supposed to protect objectively, without emotional compromise. Yes, sir. And I know that makes me a terrible bodyguard by every professional standard. Cade's jaw was tight, but his voice remained steady. I'm not asking to keep my job. I know I don't deserve it. I violated your trust and every protocol in my contract. Then what are you asking for? Permission to stay in Asher's life. Not as his bodyguard. Just as someone who loves him more than his own life. The office went completely silent. I was pretty sure my heart had stopped. My brain had definitely stopped. Did he really just say, "You love me"? I whispered, turning to stare at him. Cade turned to face me, and for the first time since I'd met him 6 months ago, he smiled, really smiled, soft and devastating and full of emotion he wasn't hiding anymore. Desperately. Completely. Since about the second week when you insisted on sharing your coffee with me because you thought I looked tired. That was months ago. I know. I've been in hell ever since. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone, completely ignoring the fact that we were standing in my father's office. Watching you laugh with other people, watching them touch you, standing 3 steps away when all I wanted was to be closer. It's been torture, Asher. Pip was never, ever going to let me live this down. My father cleared his throat loudly, and we both jumped, remembering we had an audience. When I looked at him, he was pinching the bridge of his nose like he'd developed a sudden headache. Cade, my father said slowly, standing up and walking to the window overlooking the city. In the 6 months you've worked for me, you've been the best security professional I've ever hired. You prevented that incident at the restaurant, the suspicious vehicle outside Asher's dorm, and that photographer who tried to follow him. 3 potential threats that I never even told Asher about because you handled them so efficiently. I blinked. Wait, what threats? My father ignored me. You memorized his schedule, his habits, his preferences. You've kept him safer than anyone else could have. And now you're telling me all of that was while you were emotionally compromised. Yes, sir. Cade's hand found mine again, gripping tight. If anything, my feelings made me more vigilant. Every potential threat felt personal. Every risk to Asher was unacceptable. My father was quiet for a long moment, still staring out the window. When he finally spoke, his voice was resigned. You're not fired. What? Cade and I said simultaneously. My father turned around, and there was something almost amused in his expression. You're getting a new assignment, personal detail for Asher, permanent position, 24/7 protection. You'll coordinate with my security team on any major threats, but day to day, he's your responsibility. Dad, I don't need. With one condition, my father continued, his eyes hardening as he looked at Cade. You hurt my son, you break his heart, you take advantage of him, you make him unhappy in any way, and I will destroy you so thoroughly you'll wish those men in the alley had finished the job. Do we understand each other? Cade's arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me against his side. Perfectly, sir. Though I should mention that hurting Asher would destroy me faster than anything you could do. My father studied us for another long moment, then sighed. Get out of my office. Both of you. I have actual work to do. As we turned to leave, he called out, Asher? I paused at the door. Yeah, Dad. He's good for you. I can see it. His expression softened just slightly. Just be careful. Both of you. We will, I promised. 2 months later, I still couldn't quite believe this was my life. Cade had moved into the apartment next door to mine. My father insisted on some level of propriety, even though Cade spent most nights in my bed anyway. He still drove me to classes, still maintained his vigilant awareness of every potential threat, but now he also kissed me goodbye before I went into lectures. Now his hand would find mine in the car. Now he'd pull me close when we were alone and whisper things that made me blush. You know, Pip said one afternoon as we sat in the library, I was worried that dating your bodyguard would make him less protective. But he's actually worse now. Like, exponentially worse. I looked over to where Cade stood by the entrance, currently giving death glares to some guy who'd asked me for notes on our last assignment. That guy literally just wanted to borrow your notes, and Cade looked like he was planning his murder. I heard that. Cade called from his position by the door, because of course he did. I grinned, standing up and walking over to him. Hi, terrifying bodyguard boyfriend. His stern expression melted immediately, replaced by that soft smile reserved only for me. His hand came up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. Hi, Trouble. So protective, I teased, leaning into his touch. Someone has to keep you safe from poorly intentioned baristas and business associate sons. What about well-intentioned ones? His eyes darkened, that possessive look I'd come to know well. Especially those. He pulled me closer, his voice dropping to a low murmur. You're mine to protect, Asher. Mine to keep safe. Mine. Yours, I agreed softly, then stood on my toes to kiss him properly. From across the library, I heard Pip make gagging noises. Get a room. Cade pulled back just enough to smirk. We have one. Right next door to his, unfortunately. I heard that. I laughed, pressing my face against Cade's chest. I was definitely keeping him. My stoic bodyguard who turned out to be not so stoic after all. My protector who became my everything. My Cade. And from the way he was holding me, like I was precious, like I was his entire world, like he'd fight anything and anyone to keep me safe, I knew he was keeping me too.